everyone, this is Teresa from Base 10 Montessori, and today we're going to continue doing lessons on Group 4 Math, which is the exploration and memorization of math facts in AMI Montessori. We've already done the lessons for addition and subtraction, so today we're going to start on the lessons for multiplication. Now, just like in addition and in subtraction, we're going to start out with a very concrete presentation of the concept of multiplication. And then we're going to move into materials that are a bit more abstract. So today we're going to work with the Decanomial Bead Box. Now, this is one of my favorite materials, and let me show you why. When it comes to the Montessori classroom, the colored beads are an important part of what makes the Montessori environment so incredibly appealing and exciting to work with. We have this unique system of math, and when we open this box up and we show it to our student for the first time, we're going to ask them if this reminds them of anything in the classroom. And of course, we've already been working with the bead chains at this point in time, and we have worked with the teen board, so we're already familiar with working with these colored beads. And we've also used these colored beads for the snake games for our addition and subtraction lessons. So this is a familiar material, but this is the first time they've seen it in a box like this. And for me, I absolutely love the idea of working with all these beads. Now, the box is quite a bit heavy for a young child, so that can be a little bit of a difficulty with this. And some of the challenges with this particular material is that it can be costly. It's one of those things you really have to decide if this is worth purchasing if you're in a homeschool environment. If you're just picking and choosing some Montessori materials to work with, but you're not using the whole curriculum, this is going to be something that you're going to have to think about and look to see if the other lessons in the environment are worth it to order this entire box, because these beads can be used in other lessons in the Montessori classroom. So this isn't exclusive to the lesson that we are doing today. You can use this material in other lessons, but if you are not in a Montessori classroom, this could cost you $70 to $100 just to get this material, depending on where you buy it from. I do think that this is a worthwhile purchase if you're dedicated to the math curriculum in Montessori. I do feel like it has enough applications that it's worth your money to buy it. But that's something that each individual person will have to decide on their own if you're not fully dedicated to going through this math curriculum. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with Montessori materials, let's talk a little bit about resources and where to buy this. Now, you can always buy expensive versions of the materials from Neen House, but I have never ordered from Neen House because they're way too expensive for me. I usually go either through Montessori Outlet or Allison's Montessori. And this one, I believe I ordered from Montessori Outlet. My last experience with Montessori Outlet was absolutely terrible, and it took about a year to get my materials. When I ordered from Allison's Montessori, I had absolutely no problems getting my materials right away. So at the moment, I'm recommending Allison's if you want to go through some sort of Montessori outlet. But also be aware of the fact that Allison's Montessori has two different lines when it comes to the materials. They have a value line and they have a more expensive line. So if you're just seeing really expensive materials, make sure to check out their value line. There are also materials on Amazon for this, and I'll put links to that down below. I have affiliate links to Amazon for this material down below, but just be aware that I haven't worked with the Amazon materials. I'm not sure about the quality. And so I would just say be very careful when ordering through Amazon, and read the comments, read the reviews, and understand that usually the Montessori materials through Amazon are really not as good, but they'll definitely work in a pinch. And so I just wanted to go over that real quick and to let you know that the materials that I'm working with today are from Montessori Outlet. With that being said, I really want to go through the theory behind this material and this lesson because it's very important to know why we're giving a lesson. If you don't understand the purpose of the lesson, if you don't understand the purpose of the material, how will you know if your students are using it correctly? And how will you know when to intervene if they are not using it correctly? Because a big box like this could end up being an absolute disaster if your students don't understand the purpose or have respect for the materials. And also, they may want to build with it and do creative things with it. And as a Montessori teacher, my biggest approach to a lesson is, are they fulfilling the purpose of the lesson? And that's what I want you to keep in mind when you have a big material like this and one that costs you a lot of money. Evaluate their behavior, evaluate what they're doing with this material based on the purpose of this material. If they're not using it for the purpose, I would then intervene and say, you know what, I see that you are done working with this material for the day, so let's just put it back on the shelf and we can bring this out again a different day. So with that being said, let's talk about the purpose. Now there's a direct purpose and an indirect purpose for this lesson. The purpose of this lesson is to help your student expand their knowledge and understanding of the function of the multiplier. So that's the first direct purpose. So it's all about the multiplier in this lesson. And of course, the second direct purpose is to have a better understanding and more experience with the function of multiplication. So we really want to make sure our students are understanding the concept of multiplication in this very concrete way through this lesson. I would say if they are not doing those two important things, you may want to have them put the material away because they might be playing with it. This is a material that looks a lot of fun to play with, and I would say just evaluate the behavior really carefully. Now, there is an indirect purpose to this lesson, and the indirect purpose is geometry. And your student is going to see that when we put our beads together in a sequence, it creates a geometric shape. So there is an indirect purpose for this lesson as well that relates to geometry, but we don't want this to become a manipulative. We don't want this to become a building exercise. We do want to observe the geometric patterns that we're doing in multiplication, but we don't want this to become a play toy that they're just building with. That's not the purpose of this lesson. So there's a couple helpful tips to evaluate whether or not your students are using this material respectfully and correctly, and it always relates back to, are they fulfilling the purpose of this lesson? So let's keep that in mind when we're introducing this and watching our students work with these materials. Now, I absolutely love this material. I cannot wait to work with it. This might not be your student's reaction to this. I've had some students not enjoy this at all. It is very overwhelming when you look at this, and you might have some students maybe with ADD or ADHD where something like this, when they get all the pieces out, when they start putting the pieces together, it might be too much for them and it might be a huge mess. And so you might have to work with a narrowed down or a scaled down version of this. So just remember, you might have to set some limits for different students in your classroom so that they can be successful with this. And the other thing that I will say, even though I absolutely love this, and younger students who are in the first plane of development tend to love this, but I will warn you, if you're using this in elementary for a multiplication lesson, and this is more true of boys than girls, they don't tend to want to use any concrete materials. In the second plane of development, which is ages 6 to 12, they are really getting into abstract thought. And so if you try to introduce this material a little too late when they're a little bit older, don't be surprised if they don't love it maybe as much as you do, because they are going into that abstract thought. They are going into abstract reasoning, and they're going to be less interested working with their hands. They are very interested in doing everything in their head. So that is just a little bit of an aside for this lesson as well. Keep in mind the age that you are introducing this with. We're going to be introducing it around the age of 5, 5.5. So they're tipping over into that second plane. But, you know, this does have a very narrow window for introducing it. And that's why I think it is important, if you're a homeschool parent, to consider how much you're going to be working with these beads before you buy this material. Make sure that it is worth your money and your time to buy something as expensive as this before you get into spending a lot of money on Montessori materials. Because this particular lesson, while it is phenomenal, and these beads do have many uses in other math materials, this particular lesson is very narrow and it doesn't have a huge amount of time that we're going to spend focusing on it before we move on to more advanced lessons. So just keep that in mind, that this is maybe a short-lived material, but the contents of it can be applied to other materials in the classroom. So it's a nice extra box of beads for other lessons as well. And there's one last thing about the theory behind this material. that I want you to be aware of before you present it, and that is the fact that there is no control of error with this lesson. When we are showing and presenting this lesson, we're not going to do a control of error, which means that this lesson is purely about exploration. If you want to know if they're doing this material correctly, you're going to have to observe it. You're going to have to watch, see what they're doing with it, but we're not interested in correcting their work with this one. This is exploration only. And we do a lot of things in the Montessori environment with multiplication where we have them check their work. We have other control of errors in other works, and there will be a control of error in the next multiplication work, the multiplication board. So we do have plenty of opportunities for them to do a control of error in multiplication. This is not one of them. So don't get obsessed with correcting their work on this one. That's not what this one is about. It is simply the exploration of the multiplier, the experience of multiplication, and of course that indirect purpose of geometry. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the lessons we're going to do. So today I'm going to show you the very first presentation for this material, but there are 2 following exercises that I will do in different videos. So today is just the first presentation, and then I will make follow-up videos for the following exercises. So let's jump into that first presentation. So let's get into the very first presentation of this material. As we get out this material and we present this material to our student for the first time, we are not going to have any other paper that we're working with. This is strictly going to be the material only. And when we open this up, we'll ask them, does this remind you of anything in the classroom? And they can say a lot of different things. They could say the bead chains, they could say the teen board, the snake game, or they might actually say the decanomial square, because in Montessori, we have a material called the decanomial square, and it is color coordinated to what this box looks like. So they may be familiar with it through many different materials, either in the math area or the sensorial area. So this should actually be very familiar to them when they see it for the first time. Now for this very first presentation, I'm going to pick a number. And for my first presentation, I always pick the number 6. And so we have 6 right here. And you can ask your student to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to say 6 one time is 6. And so we're going to put our initial bar up here. And we're going to put our equivalent down there. Our 6 one time is 6. Let's move on to the next set. 1, 2. 6 2 times is what? Let's count it. We know 6 one time is 6, so we know this is 6. 7, 8, 9, 10. Stop. Every time we get to 10, we're going to stop, just like we do in other math materials. So when we get to 10, we're going to stop. We're going to get a 10. We're going to bring it down. And then we can finish counting. So we got to 10 and we have 2 left. So let's build the 2 next to it. So 6 2 times is 12. So we're going to observe that 6 2 times is 12. Now let's move on to 6 3 times. 6 once, 6 twice, 6 3 times. So we're going to count this, and remember, every time we get to 10, we're going to stop. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're going to stop there, get our 10 bar, bring it down. Let's finish counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 left. So what is 10 and 8 together? If they don't remember from doing the teen numbers, they may have to count it. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18. So 6 3 times is 18. Now let's move on to 6 4 times. 6 once, 6 twice, 6 3 times, 6 4 times. And now you can see why this might get tedious for some kids, right? Because we're going to be doing a lot of counting with a lot of beads. If this seems to be overwhelming for your student, you can break this up, do smaller lessons, or pick a smaller number to start with, and just do a little bit at a time. And so we're going to keep counting. And remember, every time we get to 10, we're going to stop and put a golden 10 bar down. So we've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, stop. Bring down a golden 10. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, stop. One, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 left. So we're going to go over here, find our 4, and bring it down. And then we'll ask them to count what it is. And we're going to say 6 4 times is 24. Now, if you're familiar with Montessori materials, you know that they've worked with these colored beads and the golden beads in a variety of lessons already. So they should already be familiar with associating a number with a color. So that should make it easier for them to count and come up with the number. But for some children, this still might be a struggle. So ideally, we want to encourage them to go through this lesson as much as they possibly can. But again, every student is different. It depends on the needs of the child. You may have to break this down and do some different variations of how to approach this material depending on the needs of your student. You may have to limit the material or just do a little bit at a time. So remember to be flexible with this lesson, but at the heart of every lesson is remembering the purpose of the material, the purpose of the lesson. And so as you can see, as we're making our way through these materials, we start seeing that these lines are building, right? And so when we get to 6 times, let's say we've gone all the way through and we're getting to 6 times, what is that? When we look at this, we're going to notice that there's something about this that reminds us of the bead chains. And what is it that we do first with those bead chains? We learn about squaring. And so this does relate back to squaring. We won't go as far as to do cubing with this material, but it's definitely possible for them to keep going to the point where they have made a perfect square. And then they're going to count that out. So once again, we are reinforcing that idea of squaring in this material. So not only are we doing multiplication, we're adding in an impression of geometry, and of course we are indirectly approaching this idea of squaring. Now, once we've had them work as much as they want to work with this material, we are going to invite them to choose any number they want. So they can put this away and maybe they want to choose 1, right? They want to see what happens with 1 or 3. So they can choose to do any number they want after this and explore the multiplication facts throughout any of these numbers. And remember, in this lesson, we don't have a control of error like we do with the snake games for addition and subtraction. There's no control of error. We're not going to ask them to check their work. We're simply asking them to explore the function of the multiplier and, of course, all the indirect purposes with this material as well. But after this first presentation, we have 2 following exercises where we will explore it just a little bit more. So for the next lesson on the bead bar layout, or the Decanomial bead box as it's called, for the next lesson, we're going to explore multiplying by 10. And in the last video for this material, we're going to explore finding combinations of the same quantity. So this week, we're just doing this initial presentation, and then I'll show you how to do those next 2 following exercises. So with that being said, that's all I have for you today. I hope you've liked this video. If you have, don't forget to press that like button. Like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.